We've invited you all here today to talk about how we tackle violence against women and girls, both internationally and here in the United Kingdom.
So I'm Jess Phillips. Hello, everybody. I am the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, and I have worked with many of you variously over the years on different campaigns, and I lead for the government on what we're going to do around domestic abuse.
My name is Jess Davies. I am a TV presenter. I do a lot of documentaries looking into the space of women's safety and specifically online misogyny, deep fakes, sharing of intimate images, and I've just spent a year investigating the manosphere for my book. So in them kind of forums where we all know that women's content is shared and traded and sold, including my own, which is why I'm an activist in this area.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We really, really appreciate it. My name's Anneliese Dodds. I'm the Minister for International Development and also for Women and Equalities as well. So obviously through that, I'm focused on policies that impact on women and girls right across the board, but also thinking about what we can do internationally. I know we're going to get on to that in a minute, but yeah, really great to find out who you all are, because you're all incredibly important women who've achieved a huge amount. Thanks again for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Rehema Muthamia. I am an actor, advocate, and survivor, unfortunately, of domestic abuse. I'm also an ambassador for Solace Women's Aid, and so I speak about my own experience, sort of raising awareness of domestic abuse, the different types, because I think a lot of times we sort of initially associate it with physical abuse, but there's so many different forms of domestic abuse. I'm sort of going into the space of helping young women learn about healthy relationships, and also minority ethnic groups, just to give, you know, there's nuances in different cultures, and so just sort of getting more women from different backgrounds to speak about domestic abuse. Yeah, so that's me.
I'm Sharon Gaffka. I'm a content creator, but I'm also, I guess you would say, a freelance writer. I write a lot of things about women's health, women's safety. I'm also an ambassador to Refuge, a domestic abuse organisation, after some of my friends' experiences of domestic abuse, not necessarily the physical, but more economic and online. And I have done a lot of work with them on the online safety bill as a result of my participation in reality TV. But more importantly, I have been working on spiking legislation for over 3 years now as a result of having been spiked myself over 4 years ago, and how we tackle victim blaming and shaming culture in the UK.
Hi, I'm Sema. I'm the CEO of VAWG. We convene. We provide direct support to women and girls in the UK, and we campaign globally. And our convening work is also global. Now we work with the UK activists. We convene the activists. We also convene the African activists. We do some work in America. So anytime we see a big issue, a big hurdle that we need to get over all together, we get everyone together. So a lot of activists will know who we are. And I am the first person in my family not to have been subjected to child marriage or modern slavery, and the first person to have basically broken the cycle of abuse. So I use my lived experience, my family's experience, to show this version that this is also possible. We can have girl children growing up, going to get university education, getting CEO jobs, and thriving in life and helping their communities. So to sum up, that's what we do at the VAWG. I'm also, like you said, a writer. It's impossible not to be a writer. When you're in the space, you hear so many stories, and it inspires you, and you go home and you're just, creating a masterpiece for all you know. So I've produced two films so far, because everything I'm consuming from women and girls, it's incredibly inspiring. But yeah, most importantly, I'm always in and around government. I think I sit on 10 advisory boards in government. So whenever there's some things going on, including FCDO, they just ring us and we're like, yes, we helicopter in as the VAWGers, and we provide our support as best as we can, because partnership working is really important.
Good evening, everyone. I want to say thank you to everyone. Also, I'm so happy to be among all these powerful women, because in a million years, I wouldn't even dream that I would be in the middle of you guys, but thank you for having me. My name is Halimot. I'm the founder of Halle Cake and Catering Services, also the founder of Halle CIC, so it's two different things. With Halle Cake, I'm a full-time baker, and with Halle CIC, I found Halle CIC to be able to communicate with my sisters, and who do I see as my sister is asylum seeker, refugee, homelessness, FGM survivor. So I give them free training, like 6 months training on how to become coffee barista or to become a qualified baker. So this is free. And so it's like 2-in-1. We'll be able to like heal, like we talk about our experience. And also they will still learn how to do this, because me, myself, I'm a survivor of child trafficking. I was trafficked at the age of 9 till I was an adult, so I was there for many years. Also survivor of FGM as well. So yeah, this is my story. I'll try not to break down, but if I'm talking later and tears come, just ignore my tears.
And if you want to go outside,
it's fine.
Totally
I'm still waiting for the day that I'm going
today
to win these tears, but maybe today I'm going to win the tears, so finger crossed. Also, I'm community ambassador for Avengers and also HBA community advocate for Home Office. So I go to different places to talk about domestic violence, child marriage, anything that has to do with women. And I believe that if we victims can support you guys that are fighting for us, you know, the world, you know, will be a better place for women. And if I can do it, maybe other people like me, they'll be able to come forward and be able to talk about their journey, because I believe by talking about it, we are also healing. Though the trauma is there, it's not going to go away. We just need to find a way of, you know, coping around it. So that's what I do. Thank you.
My name is Nour Norris. I've been doing campaigning for 6 years after I lost my sister on my knees through domestic abuse. And ever since then, I've been doing a campaign called Secure Life. And the campaign is to actually change the system that is failing at the moment for people. So the aim is to, for the first response for the policing, is to get the help they need, the victim the help they need when they first call the police, and the safeguarding element of that. So I've been advocating for the law for the last 6 years, and now it's coming into action, hopefully. I've worked closely with Jess, and just been amazing through my journey. So yeah, I dedicated my life really for this. After losing my sister on my knees, I found myself in a place of obviously trauma and loss, and I managed to channel that into something better energy to survivors, to help people, to give them a voice, because my sister and my niece never had that voice they needed and the support because of the system failing again. So yeah, what we're hoping is to establish Ranim's law in the next few years and save lives, basically, because that's what really matters to me the most. Is my sister and my niece, well, they didn't get the help they needed, but now there is people out there as we speak. They need help, and we should have all the abilities to help them and support them and save them and safeguard them. And also I'm a psychotherapist. I specialize in family and domestic abuse, honor abuse and stalking. I do a lot of training around that and public speaking to raise awareness and to help people understand Ranim's law. And hopefully through today and days like this, things can get more stronger for victims by echoing their voices, doing the right thing for them to be able to be there for their first response. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Right, should we kick off with some questions? Sharon, I'm coming to you first.
Always the first one in the hot seat.
Yeah, you are, yeah. So Monday, we announced as a government that we'd be creating a new offence of spiking. You were a victim of spiking. You've spoken out about how this has impacted you. But I think what surprised us the most is how so many people still don't really realise what spiking is. So I don't know if you can talk to us about what is spiking and what more needs to be done to educate both the public and venues about what spiking actually is.
I think that we have a very outdated view that spiking is a Rehema date rape drug kind of substance that's administered into somebody's drink without consent. And yes, that is part of it, but it can also come in so many other different forms. So over 3 years of campaigning work that I've done, I've probably spoken to over 2,000 survivors of spiking, and it's come in so many different forms. I had a 14-year-old girl tell me that someone had used an over-the-counter sedative or laxative at a school disco. I've had someone tell me that their vape's been tampered with, or a vape of a friend's been tampered with. And I've had university-aged women tell me that they've been victims of needle spiking. But inherently it is administering a substance against somebody's consent, whether that be by drink, needle or vape.
Yeah. And in terms of the education around what venues need to be aware of to sort of spot the signs, the risks, you mentioned around not wanting to victim blame. I think that's something we've all been very, very clear about. We need to be putting that responsibility back on the perpetrator. But what more can be done to try and channel that, to push that narrative?
I think it's really important that certain venues have put in place safety protocols like Ask for Angela, but the BBC recently reported that it's not actually being trained upon and being used in the right way. So, if there is a safety concern, people aren't able to even ask members of staff. But I think that by channeling that victim shaming and trying to rewire how people think about it, a lot of venues, I get, they want to protect themselves and their profits, but at the same time, we have to look at protection of safety of people that go to their venues. And even if somebody has drank too much, they are still vulnerable. And it is important that as somebody they're in your venue, you should be looking after them, whether they are too drunk or spiked. And you shouldn't be just throwing them out onto the street for their own devices or for whatever else could take place. So I think it's really important that venues now take responsibility for what happens inside their four walls.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's also really important that they act quickly so that the venues can take that drink, so it can be tested, so that we've got that evidence, so that then the police can follow up on the crime and hopefully find the perpetrator to prevent it happening again.
I think that's something that was definitely apparent in my case. I was in a restaurant and the last drink I had was the drink that was spiked, and I didn't know until I started campaigning that obviously it leaves my system very quickly, but it will never leave the glass. So had I known that, or the venue had known that, we could have just taken it, and that could have helped me secure prosecution.
Why is it so important that people report it? Not necessarily to the police, but that tells someone.
I think it's important because, like you said, we've put so much onus on victims and survivors to take the blame or to blame themselves for what's happened. And the reason perpetrators are getting away with it is because we don't report it. They know that women won't report what's happened to them. And so they just consistently do it because there are no consequences for it. And I think that it's really important so we know the scope and scale of what's happening, what types of venues it's happening at, and what substances are being used, so that people like yourselves and the police, or even healthcare professionals, know exactly what they're tackling.
Just to be clear, that it's not, I suppose, necessarily a deficit in my understanding, but lots of people don't understand. Still today, nobody says anymore she was asking for it about domestic abuse. People have learnt not to say that, but they do still say, I don't understand why she doesn't leave. What I would ask is, why is that? Why do people not leave?
Oh gosh, that is the age-old question. I think even before I entered into a relationship, when you hear about domestic abuse and people are still in it 20 years, it's like, well, why don't you just pack up your bags and go if he's so horrible? It's very complex. There's so many different levels, whether that's socioeconomic, financial, people are tied into it, financial abuse, A lot of the times abusers will isolate you and make you very dependent on them. And so it's, you feel very stuck. If you don't have the funds to leave, where can you actually go? And then sort of deeper rooted in that is the sense of fear and shame. And so it's, it takes a woman an average of 7 times before she leaves. And that's average. For myself, mine was only a 2-year relationship, and I left every other week. But even still, I was there for another 2 years. And so it's a deeper-seated question that I think people really need to be quite careful when they ask, because then it takes puts all the blame on the woman when really it should be, how can we help you get out of this situation? What can we give you, provide you that you need to leave?
What I often say to people is that if the fire alarm was start to go off in here, God forbid in this fancy room, but most people wouldn't, to save their life in that moment, the quickest thing to do would just be to get up and leave. But most people would want to take their mobile phone, they'd probably want to take their bag, they'd probably want to save your life, this few seconds, you won't get up and leave that quickly, but you expect someone to walk out of their life, their entire life, their children, their everything, just like that. When people won't save their life and leave their mobile phone, let alone their children. I suppose it's the sort of potential signs of abusers. It's not that you weren't aware that you were being abused, it's the resources available to you to get away from that abuse. Presumably is the thing that is the problem currently.
I think at the moment it's so complex. I think we're very lucky to live in a country where we do have the option to say there are resources. There are many women across the world that don't have access to that. If you need any help, you have the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. You can call and get, free confidential advice. There are refuges, there are councils. So we do have the tools there, but I think the issue is that women either aren't aware that they can access those services or that there isn't enough space. I've spoken to so many people that run refuges that say, we would love to have every woman that calls to have her come in. We just don't have the funds for it. And so I think it's about how can we implement a financial structure for these refuges to have access to funds, to have women that need the space to come in. Because if you've taken the risk, you've taken your children, you've fled your home in the middle of the night, you go to a refuge and you can't get in, that is so demoralizing for a woman to know, I now have, where do I go? And it's just about how can we create spaces where the women can seek the help and they're able to stay there and know that, I am not going to be kicked out or I'm not going to be turned away.
And to you, Nour, lovely Nour, you have campaigned, as you said, for Rehema's law for, as long as I've known you. So I suppose, tell us about how important it is that first time that somebody, out of the 7 times on average that it takes somebody to walk away, when they actually do that and ring up the police, why it's so important that the right thing is said.
As you mentioned, that everyone seems to think a person can just walk through a relationship and live in their abusers. And you're right, some of them have the courage to do so, like Rehema did. But is there really a law, or is there a system would that support that victim? In 2018, it didn't. There was no such a thing. The misunderstanding of domestic abuse was huge. The culture behind domestic abuse was frightening. So when you have a victim that has all the courage in the world to pick up the phone after a long time and ask and seek for help through 999, their immediate understanding, as we all think, that they'll get the help for it. But for domestic abuse, that wasn't the case back then. So the system was failing. The police response were appalling. And overall, the criminal justice system wasn't really giving the victims their rights to live in the right way. Now, we have been campaigning for those victims who suffer chronic fear all the time. First of all, to give them a message to say, now if you call, if you are in danger, we are here to help you. So Rehema's law has implemented a lot of training for the police, not just for domestic abuse, honor abuse, stalking, and all kind of abuse that the victim gets put through their abuser. Also, it's very important to address that awareness about domestic abuse, not amongst only the government and the policing and the different sectors, but amongst the public, because like you said, that people are not aware that there is some services and help, because not everyone wants to pick up the phone and call the police. This is the last thing, and actually can be a trigger for their life. So to have someone beside them, helping them, providing for them is crucially important, just as important as having the first response at 999 call handlers. So
tell everybody what happened when Rehema called the police on the night that she died.
Yeah, Rehema was attacked by her ex-partner who she left, and she had a non-molestation order. She called the police because he attacked her in the restrooms, her mom. She called them 4 times, begging them to come out and help her, telling them that she's got a non-molestation order. Unfortunately, they didn't have it on the system, but it
never appeared on the system when she called the police that she had an order.
But the worst thing about it, she's already called multiple times before, but all her calls were not linked. So they didn't show in the system that this woman is in a lot of danger. She has been as well. Every call was treated as a single call. So on the day, she was on the run for 2.5 hours. On her 4th call, she begged them to come out because she was scared and frightened, and she knew her abuser very well. She was told to go back home. Her risk has been lowered because she's been on the run for 2.5 hours, so he's not around. And Raneem explained how her tragic death is going to look like in the next 20 minutes to the call handler. And that really did not change the attitude of the call handler, and asked her to go back home and call 999 if he appears. Even though she was explaining to them, he will be there standing behind a tree with a knife, he will kill me, he may be drunk, he'll kill my child. All that did not really pay off for anyone to come out and see her, give her help.
And so the new law that the government is putting in place, explain what it will do.
So, as she was talking to the police on her 5th call, she was walking home, he attacked her and she said he's here. But her last words to the police was, is he going to be arrested by the morning? Because over a few months she was never arrested, never charged and never questioned. Now, what we're helping for Raneem's law, no victim will go through what Raneem and other victims have been through. Raneem's law will be the umbrella of domestic abuse. It will bring out a lot of new ways of helping victims to support them. But the most important is the early intervention. So if someone calls 999 call handlers, we'll have people who are trained to help them and support them and guide them to the best possible way to safeguard them and help them. Also, the calls will be on video calls, so they can recognize and identify straight away the danger they are in, or they've been abused, or whatever's happening to them at that particular moment.
Also the new orders, so the government have launched the new domestic abuse protection orders this week, and they will all appear on the system. And that is entirely because of Raneem's case, the haunting nature of her order, her non-molestation order not appearing when she called the police, so that intelligence is there.
Yeah. I remember her saying to me, Auntie, you don't know, the police not going to help me. They believe him, they don't believe me. Well, now through the law, her voice has been heard. She's not really, she felt that she wasn't heard, she wasn't seen, she's not being acknowledged. Her life didn't matter, but now her life, it matters. It's created a law. It's going to protect and help others, hopefully. And it will reform the police, evolve the system, and hopefully it will bring in new policy to protect people from horrific abuse.
Thank you very much, everyone who's spoken so far. I know that we were talking earlier about how these issues are, of course, international as well as just domestic, and unfortunately, as we know, violence doesn't stop at any borders, it doesn't respect them, particularly when it's directed at women and girls. We've seen, for example, when it comes to conflict-related sexual violence, that the amount of it has been going up over recent years. More countries are in conflict, but we also see a rise in conflict-related sexual violence. But we also see incredible work by women just like yourselves, who are absolutely determined to do something about this. And we've recently partnered with some women's rights organisations in Kenya and South Africa that are working really hard on using the internet and other technology to protect women and girls, rather than it actually being a tool to perpetrate abuse of women and girls. So there's really exciting work, I think, going on. But I know that we've got people around the table who've been involved in some of that important work as well. So I wondered, first of all, Halimot, I know that you are someone who's really advocated so much for the rights of women and girls who have been subject to FGM, obviously who've been trafficked as well. And you mentioned the fact that you're a survivor of that yourself. I wondered if you could just explain to us a bit your journey on this and how you've actually turned that experience into advocacy.
At first, I don't really want to talk about it. It's something that I'm trying to blank out, something that I'm trying to forget. But I realized that I'm not healing. And I keep trying to like make myself go away because I was thinking I'm there, but no one seeing me. So if I go, no one is going to miss me. Yeah, and I tried that a couple of times, but I'm happy it didn't work because if it worked, I won't be here talking to you guys. And at the same time,
we love you. So yeah, she's amazing.
And at the same time, I'm still happy that it didn't work because if that worked, my trafficker will say, oh, yes, I win. So I don't want that to win. So I'm here. I'm still waiting for the day that we see her to say, you lose, I win. So my journey starts from my country in Nigeria. I'll just quickly brief because I know a lot of people have to talk. My case is not a case of like poverty. I'll say it's a case of hate. I don't know if I should say that, hate. Because I came from the family that we're not rich, we're not poor, but we are okay. But everything changed at the age of 9 when I lost my dad. I was asked to go and live with auntie that I've never seen before. But they told me she's my auntie, so I went to go and live with her. And the plan was after the burial, I should go back to school, but I never go back. So then she said she's going to take me abroad for study. And as at that time, if anyone told you want to go abroad for study, it's a lifetime dream. So at the end of the day, I ended up being trafficked from Nigeria to Italy. I spent a couple of years in Pisa, and we work in a road called Miglarino, so it's in between Pisa and Viareggio. So I stayed there a couple of years until someone said they're going to report her because I was very, very young. And she moved me from there to Spain, in Valencia. I spent a couple of years there, then she moved me here to UK.
So you got here to Britain, and then what happened when you got here?
You know, in Italy or Spain, you cannot even think of you want to run or you want to escape because there is very high price for that. So there's two, if you try to run and they find you easily, they will add money to the money you are going to pay because every year we have money that we're paying. So, and every year increase with £5,000, although as at that time, Italian were using lire. So anytime we walk, they convert the lire to dollars, and they'll say, this is how much you make this week. Though we don't know if they're right or wrong, they'll say that we have to accept. And every year the money increases 5,000. So some people pay like $30,000, 35, 40, 50. So each year increase with 5,000 US dollar.
The debt bond that you owed, yeah.
And you have to pay it. So you can't run until you finish payment. And even sometimes when you finish payment, you have to get their blessing. If you don't get their blessing, you go in soup. So she moved me from there. But she never told me how much is my debt. But I only calculate with people in front of me because when I got to the house, I met 4 people in the house. So I calculate with their money to be able to know how much I'm going to pay. But then I was very young. I don't know the difference, like what is 50,000 or 60,000 US dollar. Also, I didn't even know that that's what she's bringing me to do until there is this day that we have a visitor, an Italian guy came, and they were speaking Italian, and I don't understand. But I was watching TV like a cartoon. The cartoon is speaking Italian. I don't understand, but I only watched the picture. But they were making noise, and I just stand up to go to the bedroom, and she comes, she said, oh, come and sit down. You are not disturbing us. So I came back to sit in the living room with them, and she gave me orange juice and I think biscuits. That's the last thing I remember. And she said, there is high price for people like you.
Oh, goodness. Oh, gosh.
Then I realized, because when we are coming, we come with the 16 girls. And different people keep coming to pick those girls until me. And she has to settle the 2 kings that follow us. So they were arguing about payment. The 2 kings were saying the money she paid was too small, and because she has extra cargo, that she should have paid more. So when she told me that at her home, then I realized I'm the extra cargo those people were referring to. So then she just said it to me, this is the reason why you're here, and from now on, you're going to follow the girls to go to the road and start working. So that's how I became young.
Gosh, and that was such a traumatic experience
Very,
at
very,
such a young
yeah.
age, goodness me. And somehow you went through all of that, and now you're an activist. It's amazing you found that strength to be able to advocate in the way you do.
I think I just have so much anger in me. And I think the fire in me is what's helping me to like push forward, because I'm hungry. I'm so angry.
Fair enough.
I'm really angry. And I have so many questions in my head. I want to ask, why me? Because she took my childhood away from me. I didn't finish school. I didn't get to graduate. I didn't get to wear the prom dress. I didn't get to tell my mom that I started my period. What can I do? You know, she took a lot of stuff from me, and I'm still waiting the day that we see her and I say, what did I do?
It's not what you did.
No, it's
what she did.
Yeah.
The shame is not yours.
Yeah.
It's entirely on the trafficker and the men who decided to exploit you.
In the trafficking world, they make us believe that they have people in home office, police, hospital, like they work with. So it makes it so difficult for you to trust anyone, because you don't know if maybe the next person you are talking to is part of them. Because when it comes to trafficking, it's very big business and it's huge industry. So it's not going anywhere. It can be reduced. It's not going. It's there.
Gosh. Well, I think what you've done also to support survivors as well with Halle Berry, which sounds amazing, is really fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Also, just to move on with Sema, you shared the fact that you were the first woman in your family for a number of generations who hadn't been subject to child marriage or modern slavery, to have broken that kind of cycle of intergenerational trauma that is such a huge pressure on so many women that really destroys their lives. How do you think we can break that cycle for more women? What do you think needs to be done so that the girls that we were just talking about earlier, so that they can have better chances in the future?
Yeah, I mean, there's an anti-women's rights movement right now, we have to accept, across the globe, and everywhere is on fire. I think what we are forgetting is the hope, because, you know, my aunties back home, my cousins who are, you know, who have been subjected to child marriage, they are married to an older man, and they have children from this, you know, rape, marital rape, right? They have hope. They still wake up every morning, you know, we still communicate, and, you know, I do my best to help my community, and this is my way of, you know, helping the global change, because we need to get up, like all of us, and speak up. So it starts with speaking up, normalizing, but I would also say on issues like, you know, FGM, modern slavery, trafficking, because it's not your usual domestic violence that we are now finally able to recognize, it gets kind of like put into small circles and we separate them. So I think we need to start seeing things with gender-based violence lens. This happens to us simply because we are born a girl child. You know, I was born in the 90s. In my region, they used to bury girls alive. You know, they still did that. When you have enough children, girl children that you can sell, and if you have more, then, you know, of course, you can't raise them until they have their period. That's how little they thought of us. You know, my mom has been trafficked twice. I have 2 sets of different grandparents in 2 different countries. That, you know, one of them is the trafficker. And, you know, it's a legal mess. What I'm not seeing is enough convening to match the growth, you know, growing appetite, because this is why I drew it back to hope. We shouldn't think that, you know, there isn't a rise up against the violence as well. Everyone we work with, you know, across the community, whether in the UK, in Africa, in Middle East, in the US, you know, everywhere I see young people are standing up against violence. They want a different future. And they are more outspoken. You know, there's more Halimots, there's more Semas saying, do you know what, shoot me. And that's literally this is so disgusting, so 1990s. do you want to kill me? Because I would rather be dead than live like all of my family members.
I'd like you to stop making out that the 1990s was a long time ago.
I know. Sorry. I'm showing my age, yeah.
Some of us were not born in the 1990s.
It is a while ago, yeah. So I think it's important to remember that there is a resistance against violence, but we are actually not matching that with the funding landscape, the resources, or the capacity. Because I think, this is another thing sometimes people find controversial. You know, I'm British now, and over here I think we like to think that, you know, people don't know any better overseas, that women and girls don't know their rights, you know, they just give into this culture, as they call it. Culture is music. Culture is everything that makes us, you know, pretty and beautiful and amazing, right? That community. It's not abuse. And I think most communities now do know that. Young people absolutely know exactly what type of abuse they are going through. But are we actually placing resources into the place to meet that appetite? I mean, certainly in the UK, we do not have that resources. None of us do. You know, we've had a small budget. So I wonder if now it's the time to mobilize the corporations. That's something that we're not utilizing. Corporations run the world, not you guys, you know. Sorry. It's, you know, the corporate presidents and CEOs have more power than ministers. That is the reality we are living in now. So what are we doing as the civil society, as the government people, as NGOs to basically meet that demand, because they have the access to resources. So I would say the pure reason why I broke the cycle of abuse is literally my mom's strength to be able to stand up against the community, because in her opinion, you know, she's had 4 girl children, and every time, I remember when she gave birth to my young sister, she was like, God damn it, it's another girl. I can't protect them. I can't possibly protect them. And she said, do you know what, maybe it's good that they are a girl. At least I know they won't be raping somebody else, because I will have no autonomy over shaping their characters, right? Because we live in a very difficult, and it's difficult to be a boy child. It's difficult to be man in the world that we are living in. So she said, anyone touching my children, you get poison. She purchased a big rat poison, placed it in the kitchen, and said, if I'm your slave cooking your meal, then watch out what comes on the plate. And that's purely...
Not a great government policy.
It's not a policy. Imagine.
We'll take it away.
But imagine there was no safeguarding space. There was no policing authority. And we have called the police. You know, on your note again, to say there's an assumption, oh, women don't call the police. No.
We do.
Through our hubs, I asked this question because I wanted to entertain myself, you know. I'm curious, in the UK, how many times have the survivors of abuse called the police? On average, 3 times, 3 serious logs, and they've been through 3 to 6 forms of abuse at the same time, including FGM, modern slavery, and emotional abuse was following FGM as a top, you know, trending abuse. And they have called the police 3 times to log 3 serious incidents. We have been to the police. I remember running to the police myself when I've seen my mom in a terrible state. And, you know, police came out, had a smoke with my dad, and nothing has happened. And I was like, wow, we actually do not have a state. That is back in Turkey, but, you know, in the UK, we hear similar stories, and, you know, we know the state of the Metropolitan Police in London, for example. So it starts with us changing these systems, because what I have seen is, in our hubs, what we do mostly is move the person out of that house, the woman and the child, the children, and to a council housing, if we can. And then we give them a job, or a better job. And instantly, because 60% is financial, 40% is emotional work. So it starts with empowering women and girls. And I would say if we have done this with no support in my family, we can. So we need to be more hopeful.
Okay. We've got one more question for Jess.
Yes.
But I think, Sema, you're sort of bringing us quite nicely there in terms onto resource. Yeah. What is the government doing? We have got this ambitious mission of halving violence against women and girls over the course of a decade. It's not going to be easy, but we've got to do it. We will do it. And by doing that, though, that includes keeping women safe wherever they are, whether they're in school, in the workplace, at home, on the streets, or online. In the pub. Yeah. But that brings us to you, Jess, because your debut book, sort of Manosphere, looks at this, about what's happening online at the moment. And I thought then tipped to your point you mentioned about how it isn't easy to be a boy child growing up at the moment, and how they are being influenced by what they're hearing on social media, etc. So Jess, talk to us about that.
It's really scary, and I think, you know, offline and online really goes hand in hand, and people want to think that our online worlds are totally separate to what we live. But I always say, you know, the men who exist in these spaces who are perpetrating abuse online are the men that we exist amongst, you know, day to day. They're not robots, they're not cyborgs. You know, these are men that do that we, you know, cook next to and we have offices next to. So I guess for me, I've had my images shared, intimate images shared around my school when I was 15, when I was 19. A man that I was dating took a picture of me naked when I was asleep and sent it in a man's WhatsApp group, without my consent, of course, and since then my images have been shared across the internet, traded in e-whoring forums, used to extort other men, uploaded to escorting sites under me being available for rape role plays, and just a total loss of control really of my image. And this is why I feel so passionate about these kind of spaces, and with my investigations into these forums, I've done a lot of work in the space of deepfake abuse, and the sheer scale of how much that's grown since my first film that I did that came out 2022. I mean, now we're seeing just astronomical levels of that. And in these forums, I've seen teenage boys asking for deepfakes of their mothers, of their aunts, of their teachers, so many teachers in there. And unfortunately, female politicians, we've seen an uptick with the election here in the UK and also in America as well. And I think we try and brush it off as it not being a serious thing, but I always think, you know, if there's men and boys who think that these kind of behaviours are okay to do online, and they feel so empowered by that, because then we see it online through these kind of masculinity influencers that we all know the names of, and then we have platforms like X which are perpetrating this kind of abuse and platforming it because the algorithms push it, because the more controversial the content, the more views, they make money from it. And if these teenage boys, like, you know, touching on how difficult it is, if they're seeing this kind of content all the time, they seem to think that it's okay. And I think that's what's really terrifying, especially with, I think when we think of the likes of Andrew Tate, and I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just like an Instagram video here and there, but with the US election especially, the influence of these influencers and Twitch streamers and podcasters, you know, these men are streaming live 24/7 every day into the bedrooms of teenage boys, and what they're saying is going unchecked, unregulated, and I think that is something that is a really big concern, and the kind of content that they're saying that we all see online, which is encouraging violence against women and girls, you know, your body, my choice, that we've seen since the US election, but it's here in the UK. And I think a lot of people like to say it's niche, but what I've seen in these forums, they have millions and millions of members, and it isn't the dark web. We're talking about Discord, 4chan, which are very fringe sites, and also the likes of Discord, a platform that is a multi-million-pound platform. So, of course,
my kids use it.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people use gaming sites, gaming
platforms.
platforms.
My sons both use it.
Telegram, you know,
They don't use
not.
that.
But these are not sites that are.
No, they're not in the shadow.
No,
These are mainstream
exactly.
sites.
They're mainstream sites, and I think for me, which is really important, you know, especially with Online Safety Act, we talk about main platforms, but these fringe sites are just like the wild, wild west, and nothing's being done about it, you know, and men and boys unfortunately know that nothing is being done about it, and that cloak of anonymity that the online sphere gives them empowers them, and then they see their favourite content creator pushing that content. So, I mean, it's so difficult, but it really does go hand in hand in, if millions and millions of men and boys think this behaviour is okay online, it terrifies me to think of what they think is okay to do in the offline space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it really concerns us as well. We've got a commitment to be acting against this misogynistic content. I think it would be great if we could stay in touch, actually, on all the issues that you've raised. I think we've had such an important conversation. But look, thanks so much for being so open with us as well. Certainly this has given not just food for thought for us, but I think it's given us certainly a real injection of passion and determination for all the things that we're determined to push forward with our mission to have violence against women and girls and to act internationally against this epidemic as well. So thank you all. Thanks so much.